Hello BookTube, Sarah here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my March 2018 wrap-up. I have a lot of books to talk about in this video, so I'm going to try and do this as quickly and as informative and with as much information as I possibly can. I'm stumbling over my words today. So yeah, let's get started. In the month of March, guys, I read 25 books. I'm pretty sure that is a personal best for me. I have so found my reading mojo over the last year or so. I stepped away from reading for so long, and I didn't realize how much I truly missed it. And I really think that doing this channel is really enforcing that as well. Not just being on YouTube as a creator, if you will, but watching BookTube. And, I hear so many recommendations. There's so many books I want to read. And, finding, I've always known about audiobooks. It's not like I just found out about them. But the fact that there's such a plethora of them now, there used to be a lot different before the digital age. If you wanted to listen to an audiobook, you had to get it on CD, or back in the day, I remember getting audiobooks on tape from the library, on cassette tape, for those of you who might be too young to remember that. But yeah, it's really changed now with the digital age, and pretty much every single book is available on audio. And, I find, especially with our world nowadays and how busy everybody seems to be and the amount of time a lot of people commute or things like that, audiobooks have become a great resource for people who want to read and who might not be able to find the time, but you can find the time to listen to an audiobook. So that has made a huge difference for me in the amount of reading that I actually get done. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I will argue till the cows come home. The fact that audiobooks are considered reading in my case, or in my opinion, I should say, excuse me. So yeah, so that is, made all the difference to me, and I am so thrilled. But anyway, all that being said, like I said, 25 books so far this year, or this month, or not so far, 25 books I read in March. So as per my Goodreads goal, I am 6 books ahead of schedule. I'm at 27% done. Now, I raised my Goodreads goal. I raised that challenge goal. I was originally at 192 books for the year, which would have been fantastic. I've raised that to 240, which is going to be roughly about 20 books a month, which I think I can do. If need be, I can change it. It's a personal goal. It's not that big a deal. I just like having that to shoot towards. I noticed about midway through this month that when I was getting through a lot of books, that, I was like 13 or 14 books ahead of schedule, and I was going to let it go. I was just going to be like, all right, I'm just going to let it go and see where I end up at the end of the year. But I decided to raise that goal, as a personal best to myself, and we'll see where I end up at the end of the year. So, as for star ratings, I read 1 2-star book, 3 3-star books, 9 3.5-star books, 10 4-star books, 1 4.5-star book, and 1 5-star book. I read 13 contemporary romance books, no surprise there. I read 4 cozy mysteries, 3 romantic suspense, 1 historical romance Regency. I do subcategorize those, in case you guys are curious. I read 1 paranormal romance. I read 1 historical fiction novel, 1 thriller, and 1 historical romance medieval book. I read 24 adult books, 24 books. Now, when I say that, I always like to put a stipulation on this. When I say adult, I don't mean wink, wink, nudge, nudge adult. I mean books that are geared towards an adult audience, not YA or anything like that. And I read 1 new adult book. I read 1 book that was published in the 1980s, 1 that was published in the 1990s, 2 that were published in the 2000s, and 21 books that were published between 2010 and 2017. I read 15 audiobooks this month, 9 ebooks, and 1 actual paperback. I read 24 novels and 1 novella. Now, into my series stats. I read 20 books that were already part of an ongoing series that I was reading. Bonus. But I read 5 books that were standalone. Or no, excuse me, let me rephrase that. I read 20 books that were part of a series, 20 books that were part of a series. And I read 5 books that were standalone. Of those 20 books that were part of a series, 7 of them were new series that I started. I was really trying not to start new series. I always try not to start new series, but I always end up starting new series. And it is what it is. I'm just going to go with it. I read 11 books that were part of an ongoing series I was already reading. And I've completed 2 series this month, so that's a big bonus. I read a grand total of 7,610 pages. Roughly 245 pages a day. Thank you, audiobooks, again. So, how am I doing on my challenges? For the RRC, the March 2018 monthly challenge, I finished all 10 out of 10 books. For my Stacking the Series challenge, I have not completed any levels yet, but I've read 14 out of the 55 books. For my What to Read in 2018, I've completed 2 of the tasks, 2 of the 25 tasks, and I've read 10 out of the 42 books, so that's pretty good. For the RRC Where Are You Reading in 2018, this is the one where you try and read a book set in each different state, and I've completed 21 out of the 51 states. There are 51 states because they count Washington, D.C. as a state. For my fairy tale sampler, I completed that one, 24 out of 24, yay. Towards the end, when I was getting down to like 3 categories left, I ended up hunting out books just to read for those categories. For my fairy tale spell out, I still haven't finished any words yet. I don't know, this one's kind of hard. I'm now getting into the letters that, you know, are going to be difficult to find, like Chicken Little has 2 I's in it. I'm at a loss of like authors that start with the letter I or books that start with the letter I. And the new one that started on March 15th, which was the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs Quarterly Challenge. This is part of the Romance Readers Reading Group, the RRC. I've gotten 13 out of the 35 categories completed. That runs, I think, until June 15th. It's a 3-month challenge. So, let's jump into the books. And always is how I do this, is I go from my least favorite book of the month to my most favorite book of the month. And in case you're curious, because I'm going to run through these relatively quickly, I'm not going to give you guys a lot of information, because I talk about all these books in length when I do my weekly wrap-ups. My weekly wrap-ups are essentially my reviews of all of the books that I read in that given week. And so what I will do in the description box below is I will post the link to each of those weekly wrap-ups for the month of March and let you know which books were featured in those wrap-ups. So if you want to go and hear more about a book that I talk about here, please do go ahead and watch those videos. And what I'm really trying to do now, and I missed doing it last week, but I missed doing it 2 weeks ago, but I did it this week, is I actually put timestamps. So in case you want to go back and just watch that one part, you absolutely can. So the first book is Broken Juliet by Leisa Rayven. I gave this book 2 stars. It was book number 2 in the Starcrossed series, and it was narrated on audio by Andy Arnett. I did a whole 10-minute rant on this book. Did not care for it. There were a few things that were slightly redeeming about it. I did finish it, you know, but believe me, far from a favorite book. I actually would not recommend this one. And after I posted that that weekly wrap-up, a lot of people were commenting in the comments below. They felt the same way I did. So thank you very much for justifying that I wasn't the only one who thought so, because this book has a high star rating on Goodreads. The next one that is on the list is Sisters in Bloom by Melissa Foster. I gave this book 3 stars. It was book number 2 in the Love and Bloom series and book number 2 in the Snow Sisters series. I talk more about how this series works in my wrap-up for this book. And this was narrated on audio by B.J. Harrison. I had major issues with the main character in this book, Kaylee. She drove me just ever so slightly bonkers. She was way too full of herself, and yeah, it really took the star rating down for me. The next one is To the Edge by Cindy Gerard. I gave this book 3 stars. This was book number 1 in the Bodyguards series, and it was narrated on audio by Alistair Haysbridge. This is one where, again, I talk about this one a lot more in my wrap-up for it. I lost some credibility with the author with this book because I attempted to read another book by her. And unfortunately, when I was looking at people's reviews on Goodreads for that book, because I had a really hard time getting into it, I was very confused at what was going on an hour into listening to the audiobook. And then I read a lot of people were commenting that in order to really get this book, you had to have read this series that I read. So the author wants you to read 5 prior books before you read another series, like start another series. And that really kind of bugged me a lot. And, you know, so this one kind of got a lower star rating. It's also a very cookie cutter type book. You know, the female lead is very beautiful. The male lead is so handsome, ex-military. Of course, the 2 of them fall in love. There is a really good mystery aspect to this book, which brought the star rating up for me a bit. And that part of it I really did enjoy, and it kept me guessing. But overall, not a favorite. The next one that I finished was Secrets at Court by Blythe Gifford. This is book number 1 in the Royal Wedding series. I read this one in paperback. This was my one paperback book. It is a Harlequin historical medieval novel, and I enjoyed this one. I thought it was really cute, and the author did a lot of great research on this book. You know, you really got a lot of information on the historical time period and how things worked back then, and, you know, stuff like that. I like the characters, I like the story. This one was really cute, and, you know, definitely check it out. The next one was Rustling Up Trouble by Delores Fossen. Oh, there it is. I gave this book 3.5 stars, and this is book number 3 in the Sweetwater Ranch series. This was a good story, a great action story. It's a Harlequin intrigue novel. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm really enjoying this series as well. Next up was Listen to Me by Kristen Proby. I gave this one 3.5 stars as well. This is book number 1 in the Fusion series, and it was narrated on audio by Sebastian York and Ariel de la Selle. This one was about a group of friends who run a restaurant slash bar kind of idea, and the main character in this book is, you know, set with doing the entertainment, and the male lead is a former rock musician, very famous rock musician, who agrees to play at this like small little new start restaurant, and of course the two of them fall into a relationship. This had a lot of adult content in it. I felt a lot of it was not needed. You know, almost like the author was trying just to hit a certain page count by adding more sex scenes into it. You know, a good sex scene is a good sex scene, don't get me wrong, but when they're added in just for the sake of adding them in, it gets to be a little much. And yeah, I mean, I liked it. It was a good start to the series. I'm going to continue with the series, but I didn't absolutely love it. The next one is Sheltered by the Millionaire by Catherine Mann. I gave this book 3.5 stars, and it's book number 2 in the Texas Cattlemen's Club After the Storm series. So this entire series takes place in a small town in Texas called Royal, Texas, and it is the aftermath to various townspeople on what happened after this massive tornado has ripped through town. And this one is about a woman who runs the local animal shelter and a billionaire. And I really liked the whole helping animals aspect of this story. It was really cute. The main female lead has a little girl who's adorable, who's trying to deal with being traumatized essentially after this tornado. And it was a really great story, and I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Next up is Convenient Cowgirl Bride by Silver James. I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is book number 4 in the Red Dirt Royalty series. I really liked this story, or this series, excuse me, and I was disappointed in this story though. This was not my favorite in the series. It is pretty much a marriage of convenience story, which is fine. I mean, that's quite prevalent within romance novels. But my issue with this one was the wealth that the main character had, and how it was not thrown in your face, but mentioned literally every chance that they got on how rich he was. And it really got to be a little grating over time. I still did enjoy both the characters, although I did find him to be a bit of a jerk, but I liked her quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, all in all, it's a great series, so I recommend that you check it out. This just wasn't my favorite in the series. The next one was More Than a Cowboy by Cathy McDavid. I gave this book 3.5 stars, and it is the first book in the Reckless Arizona series. This one was really cute, about a family that owns a business that does like boards horses and teaches rodeo classes and things like that, and how after something that happened many years ago, you know, a man returns to town. Like, he left when he was just graduated from high school. He took off because of something that happened, and now he's come back, and, you know, it's pretty much his relationship with the daughter, I don't say daughter, one of the co-owners of this, like, dude ranch kind of idea. And it's a really cute story, and I really enjoyed it. Next one was 8 Men and a Lady by Elizabeth Sinclair. I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is a really adorable retelling, sort of Snow White. It's about a woman who has won a big lottery jackpot, and, you know, it kind of is slipped to the media who she is, and now she's getting all these proposals and stuff by various men. So she goes up to this remote cabin in the Adirondacks to kind of like hide out for a month, and is awoken by these 7 old men who she's in their cabin because they are up there to ice fish all winter, like for a month in the wintertime. And it's kind of the story of her falling in love with the guy who actually owns the campground. And it's, like I said, it's a really cute kind of sort of retelling of Snow White. The old men in the story are fantastic. They reminded me a lot of Grumpy Old Men. Do you know what I mean? Remember that movie back in the day? I love that. With Walter Matthau and, oh, what was the other guy's name? Oh, Jack something? I can't remember now, but I love that movie. Where he leaves the fish in his car. That movie's fantastic. Now I want to watch that movie. But anyway, that's what the old men kind of reminded me of. And the story was a lot of fun. It is available on the Kindle, so definitely go and check it out if you'd be interested in that. The next one was Lemon Meringue Pie Murder by Joanne Fluke. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's book number 4 in the Hannah Swensen series. This one I read for the March Mystery Madness Challenge, and this was for borrow from the library. Another great entry in the Hannah Swensen series. Her on-again, I don't want to say on-again, off-again boyfriend because she's kind of dating 2 guys. But the one guy that she's dating, he buys this house and he's going to kind of demolish it and build their dream house that they designed for a contest in a previous book. And while they're at the house, they find a woman has been murdered. And, you know, the story goes from there. It's a cozy mystery series. Really, really cute. I really, really recommend this series. Next up is Rock Courtship by Nalini Singh. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's book number 1.5 in the Rock Kiss series. This was my novella this month. And it was narrated on audio by Justine O'Keefe. This was really cute. It was about the relationship between the drummer of the rock band. This entire series is based on a rock band. And his relationship with their PR woman. And it gets very, very spicy for such a short novel. Spiciness abounds in this little novella. It really wasn't that little, though. I think it was around 150 pages. So I think on audio it was over 4 hours. But it was really enjoyable, and the audio was great. And it's available on the romance package on Audible if you're interested in checking it out. Next up, we have Flawless by Heather Graham. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's book number 1 in the New York Confidential series. This is a great cops and robbers type mystery story. You know, Heather Graham does these so well. I just love her books, you know that. It takes place in New York City, and it takes place around this bar called Finnegan's, and there's jewelry thieves and things like that, and the FBI is involved. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I definitely recommend it. Unlike most Heather Graham that I read, this one has absolutely no paranormal element to it. It's just a straight mystery, and that's a lot of fun. Next up, Greek for Beginners by Jackie Braun. I gave this book 4 stars, and it was narrated on audio by Maxine Mitchell. This is a Harlequin Kiss novel, which tend to be their more, it's a line that's no longer being published, sadly. But these are very much like a romantic comedy kind of book, and this is about a woman who left her fiancé a couple months before the wedding, and he lets her take the honeymoon that they were going to take to Greece. So she ends up in Greece only to find out that he did not exactly get the best tour package. It was pretty much the tour company is run by a guy who is perpetually drunk. So she meets this man at the airport, and he offers to kind of be her tour guide for a few weeks. And of course the two of them have a relationship. It's a really cute, fun romp. It was really, really fun reading about Greece. And the narration on this was absolutely fantastic. The narrator did a great job with the Greek accents and then along with the American accents. It was really, really fun. And yeah, again, another one available on the Audible Romance package if you're interested in checking it out. Next up, Royally Endowed by Emma Chase. I gave this book 4 stars. It's book number 3 in the Royally series, and this was narrated on audio by Shane East and Andy Arnett. I love this series. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The whole premise of this series is about 2 brothers from a fictional country who are crown princes. Very much like, oh, what are their names? The one married to Kate, William and Henry. You know, you can see the author drew a lot of inspiration from the current royal family. But this one is not about one of the princes. It's the 3rd book, and it's about their bodyguard Logan and his relationship with the younger sister of the main character from the 1st book. Now this book actually follows about 6 years of time, because when you first meet the sister, Ellie, she's only like 17, and he's, I think, 24, 25. So it ages about 6 years until she becomes like an adult. And, you know, it makes it a little bit more acceptable for the two of them to have a relationship. But there are a lot of sexy times in this book. There is quite a bit of swearing in these books, just to let you know. But they are still a lot of fun, and I really, really enjoy them, and I do highly recommend them. Next up is Murder at the House of Rooster Happiness by David Carasette. I gave this book 4 stars. This is book number 1 in the Ethical Chang My Detective Agency series. It's narrated on audio by Kristen Cablini, I believe. This was another one for my March Mystery Madness choices. This was the book for Foreign, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I wasn't too sure exactly what to expect out of it, but it was so much fun. It was set in Thailand, and it's a cozy mystery about a woman who is an ethical nurse at this hospital, and there are men who are being brought into the ER already dead, and the woman, the wife who shows up, immediately has like the marriage certificate and is just looking for the death certificate. So red flags are being raised, and you know, because she's doing this at different hospitals, so you know, the mystery aspect comes into it. A lot of fun, great on audio, and I highly recommend this series. The next one was Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fanny Flagg. I gave this book 4 stars, and it was narrated on audio by Lorna Raver. I don't think I need to say too much about what this book is about. I'm pretty sure everybody but me has seen the movie. I do actually plan on going ahead to watch the movie sometime in the near future. This is a great Southern historical fiction type novel that goes back and forth in time to the Depression era. This was written in the 1980s. And it was funny as I was reading it because I remember thinking, oh, it wasn't written that long ago. And then I realized it was written in 86, and I'm like, that was 32 years ago. Suddenly I felt really old. But it was a really, really great story. It's a longer book, but it's Fanny Flagg. She is great. This was not my favorite Fanny Flagg novel, but absolutely enjoyable. If you've only seen the movie, I absolutely recommend picking up the book and checking it out. Next up, Brownies and Broomsticks by Bailey Cates. I gave this book 4 stars, and it's book number 1 in the Magical Bakery Mystery series, and it was narrated on audio by Joanna Parker. And this is one I actually switched out because I wasn't going to have time with all the other challenges I was doing. I needed this book, a book like this, to fit into a certain challenge. And the other book that I had for the March Mystery Madness Challenge for New, which was Read a New to Me Author, wasn't going to work with what I needed it to work for. So this one got subbed in. So again, I read this one for the March Mystery Madness for New. And this is a cozy mystery series about a group of witches who run a magical bakery, and it was a lot of fun. I love this series. I am definitely looking forward to checking out all the rest of the books in this series. My library has all of them on audio, and I cannot wait to get to them. Next up, we've got Charmed by Chocolate by Stina Holmes. I gave this book 4 stars, and it was book number 6 at the Love It to the Chocolate Shop series. This is a great story, a love story about 2 friends who have been best friends since they were little kids. And, you know, him and her are still texting and emailing, even though they live, like, many states away from each other. Oh, excuse me, some stuff happens and she ends up coming home. And, you know, he's in love with her, she's in love with him, but they don't want to tell each other, that kind of thing. It was a lot of fun and a really, really enjoyable story. Next up is A Lesson in Love and Murder by Rachel McMillan. I gave this book 4 stars, and it is book number 2 in the Herringford and Watts series. This was also read for March Mystery Madness. This was my historical pick. I really enjoyed this one. It's set in Toronto in 1912, my home city, and it was a really great cozy mystery that also happens, the characters go to Chicago for part of it, and it was really, really enjoyable. I am going to be doing a giveaway. I mentioned this when I did my TBR for March Mystery Madness. I'm doing a giveaway for the first book in this series, A Bachelor Girl's Guide to Murder. And anyone who commented on any of my March Mystery Madness videos will be entered into that drawing. And I will be doing that drawing on Saturday, this coming Saturday, when I do my first wrap-up for the month of April. So stay tuned for that. Next up, guys, we're getting close to the end, I promise. We have All I Ever Wanted by Kristen Higgins. I gave this book 4 stars. This was narrated on audio by Exie Sands. I love Kristen Higgins. I adore all of her books. This was not one of my favorites, but still absolutely highly enjoyable. It's about a woman who just turned 30, and she's been in love with the guy that she works with forever and ever. He does not feel the same way about her. She meets the local town veterinarian who she doesn't like very much, but of course the two of them start a relationship, and it's a wonderful story. There are some very touching and heartfelt moments in this. There are some laugh out loud funny moments in this. This is classic Kristen Higgins, and I absolutely loved it. Next up is Haunted Destiny by Heather Graham. I gave this book 4 stars. It's book number 18 in the Crew of Hunters series, and it was narrated on audio by Luke Daniels. Right off the bat, the narration on this one was great. I adore Luke Daniels as a narrator. This was a great paranormal mystery story about a killer who's on board a cruise ship, and, you know, you're kind of in a self-contained, you know, essentially an island that's moving. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, and they're trying to outrun this killer and find out who the killer is, and it was really, really great, and I highly enjoyed it. This one was another March Mystery Madness book that I read for the category shelf. I read this one for shelf. So yes, very, very much enjoyed. Oh yes, and as I'm talking about my March Mystery Madness, I forgot to mention that Lemon Meringue Pie Murder by Joanne Fluke was my shelf category pick, because I borrowed it from the library. So the next book is Once More My Darling Rogue by Lorraine Heath. I gave this book 4 stars. It's book number 2 in the Scandalous Gentleman of St. James series, and this was narrated on audio by Helen Lloyd. The easiest way for me to tell you what this book is about, and I talk about this in my wrap-up for this book, the kind of basic premise of this story very much reminded me of that great 80s movie Overboard with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. In this book, the main character finds the lead female character on the riverbanks of the Thames, and she has been kind of knocked unconscious, and when she finally comes to, she has no memory of who she is. He knows exactly who she is. She's a very, very rich woman who has been nothing but rude and mean to him since day one, and he decides he's going to teach her a lesson, and she ends up working for him, or he convinces her, excuse me, that she is actually his live-in maid, or his servant. And, you know, the story kind of goes from there. There's some very dark backstory to this book, but for both the characters. But that part of it, that kind of lighter aspect, really, you know, made it a very complete story. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing with this series. Second last book is 6 Years by Harlan Coben. I gave this book 4.5 stars, and it was narrated on audio by Scott Brick. This was a great thriller novel, and this I read for the opposites category for March Mystery Madness, because I typically don't read thrillers, so this was the opposite of what I would normally read. And, oh, guys, this book was so good. The very quick plot outline for this book is that it's about a man and a woman who have a relationship years before, 6 years to be exact. And then at the end of the summer, they kind of go their separate ways. I guess they're going to plan on meeting up again, and he gets an invitation in the mail to her wedding. And he, of course, goes because he was invited. And he shows up, and she pretty much tells him, please don't try and find me, leave us alone, blah, 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 blah. I've moved on kind of idea. Well, he can never get her out of his head, and then 6 years later, he happens to see the obituary for her husband. So he figures now maybe he can go and talk to her. So he goes to talk to her, and she's gone. No one knows who she is. No one knows where she's gone. No one remembers her, stuff like that. Really interesting thriller. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and it was a very enjoyable read. And last but not least, my very favorite book of the month was The Perfect Match by Kristen Higgins. I gave this book 5 stars. It was book number 2 in the Blue Heron series, and it was narrated on audio by Amy Rubinate. I love the Blue Heron series by Kristen Higgins. It is probably, those books are probably my favorites by her, and the ones I will recommend to everybody right off the bat. This one was a great story about Honor and a guy named Tom, and it's a marriage of convenience kind of idea. He needs a green card, she wants a husband. So the story kind of goes from there. It was absolutely fantastic. Tom, you know, I know, and I mentioned this in my wrap-up as well, but they talk about a lot here on BookTube. You hear a lot of questions and tags being like, who's your book boyfriend? And, you know, book boyfriend, that's a little, to me, it's a little silly. But if I had to pick one, it would be Tom. And the narration on this was great. He is British, and she does a great British accent for Tom. And he, you know, he boxes for fun, like for sport, for exercise, I should say. And, you know, Honor's a very sweet girl. She's Faith's older sister from the first book. And, yeah, I absolutely recommend this series. It's one of my absolute favorites. So anyway, guys, that is all the books. And I know this video was super duper long, and I do apologize. I tried to keep that as concise as I possibly could, you know, without giving you guys enough information, but not too much, because I've already gone over all of these books in all of my weekly wrap-ups, and I really just didn't want to sit here and repeat myself. But I still like doing these wrap-ups where I list the books in order of how I love them. So, yeah. Anyway, hold on. It's dry in here. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you guys before I let you go is, you guys know on my weekly wrap-ups I like to show you guys what I'm currently knitting on that weekend. I've decided I'm going to start showing you guys my blanket tray and my wrap-ups. I hope you're okay with that. If you don't want to see it, feel free to turn off the video. But this is a blanket that I am working on. It's going to take me years to complete. It's being knit. Each of these squares is knit individually. Each one is knit individually onto an old one. And this is called, I'm calling it my sock yarn blanket of insanity. I need to put 1,600 squares in this blanket to make it fit our bed. So what I want to show you guys at the end of each month, if that's okay, is the squares that I put in for that month. Now, I'm not going to go through each of these individually. That would be silly. But there is, now this isn't just in March. I haven't shown this to you guys since, I think, December. So this is since January. So, you know, there's the last one that I put in where my little marker is there. So it's these 2 rows, 1, 2, these 2 rows all the way across. That's what I've done since January, or those ones. I love this one because it's really Christmassy, and this one, you can't really tell. Oh yeah, maybe you can. It's actually sparkly, and so is this one, I believe. But yes, yeah, so I've added those ones in. I am now at 294 squares done, I think. I am almost done this row, so I've got this much more to go on this row. But yeah, isn't it gorgeous? I absolutely love this blanket. It makes me all kinds of happy. My weekends I spend in the mornings, because I don't have a lot going on, is I will sit and add 2 squares to this blanket each Saturday and Sunday. So 4 squares get added every weekend. And on days off. So like yesterday, I'm filming this on Saturday. Yesterday on Good Friday, I added 2 squares to it because I had a day off of work. And I sit and listen to my audiobook while I'm doing that. And it's really, really mindless and a lot of fun. And I just love, love, love this blanket. So yeah, so I'll be showing this to you guys when I do my wrap-ups every month, if that's cool. So yeah, so that's it. I'm going to let you guys go now. I'm all done. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books and what did you think about them? Or what was your favorite book that you read in March? Because I'd love to hear. And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Bye.